Today I will apply the bracing to the back of the soundboard. I let the glue dry overnight on the sound hole support. That way I knew there would not be any pockets of wet glue. So today I will clean up the back side of the soundboard and install the bracing. First I sanded it thoroughly. Then I did a little bit of scraping. Some of this was done with a scraper and the other part I did with a razor. It is the same concept when you're using a razor as it would be with a scraper. It's just I use the razor for more delicate areas. I use it on the whole face of the soundboard because the rosette is one of those delicate areas. A razor does a great job. Then I made up the bracing. I took some western red cedar and cut it about 3/8 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. The piece I used was 22 inches long. After this, I used my planer to thin it down to 5/16 of an inch. I measured the length for each of the lateral braces and marked the center line. Then I cut the braces to length on the miter box. After this, I laid out the arches on the underside of the braces, and instead of cutting them out, I used the spindle sander to remove the wood. I did this partly because the radius of the end of the spindle sander is perfect for this. Once the length of the arches are cut out, I rounded the top of the braces a little with a spindle sander, and then sat down and hand sanded each brace and the arches. Now it's time to glue the lateral braces. I started with the one at the waist and then did the one on the upper bout. I applied gravity clamps to the braces and went on to the next part while this was drying. Next, I cut pieces out for fan struts. This material had to be thinned down a little. I planed it down to 1/4 of an inch. Then I shaped them so that they went from straight for half of the piece and then tapered from 1/4 of an inch height to 1/16 of an inch on the ends. I did this with the bandsaw, and then I used the spindle sander to get the final shape. It's time to glue the fan struts in place. I start with the middle strut. I applied the glue and placed it over the center line joint of the two halves of the soundboard. I let that sit for a minute. And while each one of these is drying, I took the time to sand and to shape the fan struts. By the time I finished sanding one, I was able to start gluing the next. I placed a fan strut spacing jig next to the center strut and used it to mark the location for the next strut. Then I dry fit the strut and cut the end of it off at the angle so that it would join to the waist lateral brace. Then I glued it to the soundboard. Again, while this piece was drying, I shaped up the next piece. I shaped up the end strut, and this end strut, this one protrudes under the arch of the soundboard and on the top of the sound hole support pad. So I had to cut the back of it off and cut it to shape to fit. With each piece I put on the back, I carefully cleaned the excess glue and wiped up any excess glue with a damp rag. I can't express how important it is to go back and clean up your excess glue. It is not that it will hurt anything, but it has more to do with workmanship and taking pride in what you do. More than likely, no one will ever see this work. Now it's time to cut the sound hole. I set the Stumac rosette and sound hole jig up so that it would cut the hole. Then after I cut through I widened it a little. so that I could trim it very gently rather than just making the cut. After the hole is cut, I do a little hand sanding around the hole just in case there are any splinters that need to be cleaned up. There are two more braces that need to be installed. They are called the cantilevers. They're about 4.5 inches long, and they protrude from each side of the instrument at roughly 45-degree angle. They have to be cut to go over the fan strut. Their purpose is to support the area outside the fan struts and keep it from warping. The bottom of these pieces probably help stiffen the area below the bridge. They go diagonal and across the grain of the top. The shape of these cantilevers is not as important as they are decorative, in my opinion. Once the cantilevers are on, I just go back with sandpaper and clean up anything that looks bad. Now, all the major parts of the body of this instrument are done. The next step is to fit the top and the back and the sides and glue them. It's starting to get fun now.